Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of almost mechanical
Oh,
precision.
definitely. Like it's a binary thing.
Right. You break your arm, you get an x-ray, the doctor points to that jagged white line, and there's your problem. It's broken or it's not.
It's a very clean way to look at disease. We naturally want to view illness as this, isolated, easily defined object.
But when you picture a lung cancer tumor, what do you actually see in your mind's eye? I mean, if you're like most people, you probably imagine a solid, lifeless lunk of rogue cells.
Just a rogue mass sitting there inside otherwise healthy tissue.
Exactly. But what if, instead, that tumor is actually a bustling microscopic city, like a highly complex biological habitat with its own local climate, its own customized defenses, and, most surprisingly, of all its own microscopic tenants moving in?
And that shift in perspective is honestly what makes modern oncology so fascinating right now. We're moving away from looking at a tumor as just an isolated mass. We really have to start looking at it as an active ecosystem.
Which brings us to what we're exploring today. Welcome to the Deep Dive. We are looking at some wild new 2026 research out of the journal Frontiers in Cellular and Infect Microbiology, along with an article literally titled, Does Lung Cancer Have Its Own Tenants?
It's a great question.
It really is. And our mission today is to find out if cancer tumors are actually acting as safe houses for opportunistic fungi. So whether you're an active medical professional or, just someone who is insanely curious about the hidden mechanics of the human body, this deep dive is going to fundamentally change how you view disease.
Because we really have to stop thinking of cancer as just an invader and start thinking of it as an environmentalist. It literally terraforms your lungs.
Okay, so to understand who is moving into this terraformed city,
Yeah.
we have to look at how the real estate is built in the first place, right?
Right. For decades, the vocabulary of cancer has been a vocabulary of war and genetics. A cell's DNA mutates, it escapes the body's normal control mechanism, and it multiplies.
Uncontrollably.
Exactly. But a tumor doesn't grow in a vacuum. It interacts. If it wants to grow beyond a tiny clump of cells, it needs resources.
So it secretes specific chemicals to hijack the body's plumbing, basically, forcing new blood vessels to grow directly into it.
Yeah, a process called angiogenesis. And it also actively alters the local pH. Tumors pump out lactic acid, which makes the surrounding tissue highly acidic.
Which is toxic to healthy cells.
Highly toxic. It essentially kills off the neighbors to make more room for the tumor, and at the same time, that acidity actually paralyzes the body's immune cells.
Wow.
Yeah, the tumor is literally changing the physical and chemical laws of its local neighborhood to ensure its own survival. Oncologists call this the tumor microenvironment, or the TME.
Okay, let's unpack this. If a tumor is essentially building its own lawless city, manipulating the environment and locking out the immune system's cops,
Yeah.
it makes you wonder who else moves in when the neighborhood is unguarded.
And that exact question brings us to the microorganism at the center of today's scientific mystery. It's a fungus called Pneumocystis jirovecii.
Right, and if that name sounds vaguely familiar to you, it's because Pneumocystis jirovecii has a very dark medical history.
It really does. It's historically famous for causing severe, life-threatening pneumonia, specifically in people with highly compromised immune systems.
It became a defining and tragic hallmark of the AIDS epidemic in the 1980s.
Exactly. And we still see it today in organ transplant recipients or patients undergoing heavy chemotherapy. In those vulnerable states, it causes an active, aggressive infection called pneumocystis pneumonia, or PCP.
Which makes this research feel like a massive contradiction at first glance. If this fungus causes severe open conflict in the lungs of incredibly sick people, why on earth are researchers looking for it in lung cancer patients who do not have pneumonia?
Well, because of a phenomenon in microbiology called colonization. We're finding out that this fungus doesn't always act like an invading army. Sometimes it can just exist in the human lungs without causing any classical disease symptoms at all.
So colonization isn't an infection.
Not at all.
It's more like a squatter who sneaks into a building and taps into the electrical grid. They steal just enough resources to charge their phone and survive, but they never turn on the big lights.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it.
They stay completely under the threshold that would trigger the landlord's alarm system, which is the human immune system.
Right. They cause no structural damage so the body doesn't fight back. The fungus is extracting what it needs while flying completely under the radar.
And because that tumor microenvironment we outlined has its own unique, highly immunosuppressed local climate, scientists started wondering if the tumor itself could be providing the ultimate secure building for this squatter to hide in.
Exactly. Which brings us to the actual hunt. To find out if this stealthy fungus is setting up shop inside tumors, we need to look at the groundbreaking work led by Dr. Magdalena Shudovic.
And she's out of the Department of Biology and Medical Parasitology, right?
Yes, at the Faculty of Medicine, Wrocław Medical University.
So they essentially organized a microscopic safari.
A massive collaborative safari. They worked with the 4th Military Clinical Hospital in Wrocław and pulled in clinical and molecular experts from the Czech Republic, Spain, and France.
That's a huge team.
It had to be. Between 2023 and 2025, they assembled a study group of 70 patients. All 70 had primary lung cancer, and all were scheduled for surgery to remove their tumors.
But the defining feature of this study group, and what makes the methodology so rock solid here, is that none of these 70 patients had received any chemotherapy or immunosuppressive treatments in the 6 months prior to their surgery.
The importance of that cannot be overstated. I mean, chemotherapy fundamentally alters and damages the body's immune system.
So if they had tested patients after chemo and found the opportunistic fungus, skeptics would instantly dismiss the findings.
Oh, instantly. They'd say, well, obviously the fungus is there, the chemotherapy drugs destroyed their immune system and left the door wide open.
Right. By testing patients before these heavy medical interventions, Dr. Shudovic and her team were investigating a pristine crime scene, a baseline ecosystem.
They wanted to see the natural state of the tumor's real estate before the heavy artillery of medical treatments came in and scorched the earth. They really wanted to know if the tumor itself was rolling out the welcome mat for the fungus.
So how do they actually look for it? Because I imagine you can't just swab a tumor and look under a regular microscope.
No, you definitely can't. During the surgeries, the medical team systematically collected 3 distinct samples from every single patient. This allowed them to create like a spatial map of where the fungus might be hiding.
Okay, so what were the 3 samples?
First, they took a fragment of the neoplastic lung, the NPL. This is the actual physical tumor mass.
The inner fortress.
Right. Second, they took a fragment of normal adjacent tissue, the NAT. This is the seemingly healthy lung tissue right outside the tumor's borders, the suburbs, basically.
And the third?
Respiratory secretions, the RS, the fluids moving through the lungs' airways.
So once they had those 3 samples from all 70 patients, they had to go looking for the squatter. But you can't just swipe Noocystis jirovecii onto a standard petri dish and watch it grow, can you?
No, it famously refuses to be cultured in a lab. So the researchers had to use a highly sensitive molecular technique called nested PCR.
Okay, standard PCR polymerase chain reaction is already a powerful tool. It searches for a specific genetic sequence and amplifies it.
Like finding a needle in a haystack.
Right. But nested PCR takes it a step further. It's like using a magnifying glass to find the needle and then putting a second magnifying glass over that one to find a microscopic scratch on the metal.
That's exactly it. It uses 2 successive sets of genetic primers to zoom in on incredibly tiny amounts of fungal DNA that a normal test would miss entirely.
And they weren't just looking for any DNA. They were specifically targeting mitochondrial DNA. The loci they zeroed in on were the MTLSU RNA and the CYB genes.
And the mechanics of why they chose mitochondrial DNA is actually pretty clever. A cell usually only has one nucleus, meaning one copy of its nuclear DNA. But a single fungal cell can have hundreds of mitochondria.
Which means hundreds of copies of that specific mitochondrial gene.
Right. When you're searching for a pathogen that is only present in incredibly low numbers, as is the case with a stealthy squatter targeting mitochondrial DNA, gives researchers a much louder genetic signal to listen for.
So the traps were set. The nested PCR machines scanned the baseline ecosystems of all 70 patients. And what they found is where this deep dive gets really intriguing. Out of the 70 patients tested, they found the fungal DNA in 8 of them.
About 11.4%.
But the spatial mapping is what matters here,
Yep.
right?
While they found the fungus in the normal adjacent tissue or the respiratory secretions of those 8 patients, they only found the fungal DNA embedded deep inside the actual tumor tissue itself in 2 patients.
Okay, wait a minute. Let's pause right here and play the absolute skeptic.
Yeah.
2 people. 2 out of 7.
I know it sounds low.
Statistically speaking, that is a tiny number. How can we possibly draw any scientific conclusions from a sample size of 2? It feels like we could just write that off as a statistical blip, a total accident.
And that is the natural reaction. Any good scientist would raise that exact concern, and the authors of the study are extremely cautious not to overstate the numbers.
So why does it matter?
What's fascinating here is that the significance isn't in the quantity of the cases, it's in the quality of those two specific tumors. Both of those patients, the only two to have the fungus actively colonizing the inside of the tumor fortress, had the exact same highly specific type of cancer.
Oh, wow. They were both diagnosed with grade 3 invasive non-mucinous adenocarcinoma.
Yes. And we need to unpack what that means biologically because it answers your question of why this isn't just a statistical blip. Grade 3 is the highest histological malignancy grade. It means these cells are poorly differentiated.
Meaning they don't look, act, or function like normal lung cells anymore.
Exactly. They are highly aggressive, highly mutated, and spreading rapidly.
And the non-mucinous part is a crucial mechanical detail, isn't it?
Very crucial. Some adenocarcinomas produce a thick layer of mucus. That mucus acts like a physical barrier, trapping debris and pathogens.
But these specific tumors were non-mucinous. They lacked that protective, slimy wall.
Which might physically explain how a fungal spore could penetrate the tissue in the first place without getting bogged down.
That makes perfect sense.
Add to that the fact that these are highly invasive grade 3 tumors, and you get to the aha moment of the entire study. We talked earlier about the tumor microenvironment terraforming the lung. Well, a grade 3 tumor is the ultimate terraformer.
Right. To survive and aggressively expand, it has to completely blind the body's immune system.
It does this by establishing a severely immunosuppressed niche.
It basically hires a private security force. The tumor sends out chemical distress signals that literally brainwash the body's own immune cells.
It recruits tumor-associated macrophages and cancer-associated fibroblasts.
And these hijacked cells lay down dense collagen walls and secrete a chemical fog called cytokines. This fog effectively blinds the body's normal T cells, preventing them from recognizing or attacking the cancer.
The tumor builds a localized pocket of total immune suppression. It locks the cops out. But by doing so, it inadvertently creates what the researchers call a permissive microenvironment.
So the aggressive cancer builds the perfect, consequence-free safe house.
And that opportunistic squatter, Pneumocystis jirovecii, just wanders in, realizes the immune system can't see it through the chemical fog, and sets up camp deep inside the neoplastic tissue.
And the researchers proved this wasn't just a single lucky spore that got trapped, right? Because they were reading those specific mitochondrial genetic barcodes. They could actually see the complexity of the colonization.
Yeah, in one of those two tumor samples, the nested PCR revealed a mixture of different fungal strains.
Finding divergent genotypes living inside a single tumor is massive.
It really is. It proves that this isn't a static, accidental event. It's a dynamic, ongoing colonization. It reflects a permissive habitat that is so stable and so safe that multiple different variants of the fungus can gather, coexist, and survive over time.
So we have this incredible biological mechanism revealed. Highly aggressive tumors manipulate the immune system so intensely that they accidentally create a safe haven for opportunistic fungi.
Which is wild, just totally unexpected.
But let's bring this back to reality for a moment.
Uh-huh.
Two cases, no matter how mechanistically profound, are not going to change global oncology protocols tomorrow morning.
No, they're not. This is pure exploratory research. It is the very first step on a very long road.
And in an era of clickbait health headlines, it is so easy for nuanced science to be entirely misrepresented. So we need to explicitly clarify what this study does not say.
Let's do it.
First, this research does not imply that the fungus causes lung cancer. The cancer terraformed the environment first. The fungus is just a tenant taking advantage of the real estate.
Correct. Second, it does not mean that lung cancer patients should suddenly be prescribed proactive antifungal medications. There is absolutely zero clinical evidence suggesting that would be helpful right now.
Right. And third, it does not prove that the presence of this fungus makes the patient's prognosis any worse. As far as the current data shows, the tumor and the fungus are just roommates.
The fungus isn't helping the tumor grow, and the tumor isn't intentionally feeding the fungus.
So if this doesn't change how a doctor treats a patient tomorrow, why should you, the listener, care about this incremental shift in knowledge?
You should care because historically these tiny incremental anomalies are exactly what spark massive paradigm shifts in medicine.
Think about stomach cancer.
Oh, perfect example. For decades, the entire medical establishment believed that stomach ulcers and gastric cancers were caused by stress, spicy food, excess acid.
If you suggested that a bacteria could survive the highly acidic environment of the stomach, you were laughed out of the room.
Until scientists discovered Helicobacter pylori. They proved that this tiny bacteria was actually burrowing into the stomach lining, surviving the acid, and drastically driving up the risk of cancer. It completely rewrote gastroenterology.
Or look at the human papillomavirus, HPV. The idea that a common virus could be the primary driver of cervical cancer was revolutionary.
And right now, one of the hottest topics in modern oncology is the gut microbiome. We're finding out that the specific balance of bacteria in your digestive tract fundamentally impacts whether or not your body will respond to cutting-edge cancer immunotherapies.
Everything is interconnected, and Dr. Sidovich's work out of Roca is a vital building block in an entirely new emerging frontier called the mycobiome, the fungal equivalent of the bacterial microbiome.
We spent so much time looking at bacteria and viruses, we're only just beginning to map out the fungal ecology of the human body.
This study is just a textbook example of how foundational science works. It rarely starts with a sudden eureka moment that cures a disease overnight.
Right. It starts with a carefully posed, slightly strange question. Can a stealthy fungus live inside a solid tumor?
Then comes a preliminary observation. Yes, under very specific, highly aggressive immunosuppressed conditions, it appears it can.
And the next step is that teams all over the world will read this paper, take this methodology, and run larger-scale, multi-center studies.
They'll test hundreds or thousands of patients to see if this pattern holds up across different demographics and different types of cancer.
They'll want to investigate whether the presence of these fungal tenants actively alters the local inflammation of the tumor. Like, does the immune system eventually notice the fungus and attack, accidentally harming the tumor in the process?
Or does the fungus secrete its own compounds that make the tumor even more resistant to targeted therapies down the line?
Exactly. These are the questions that will drive the next decade of research.
And that broader perspective is deeply empowering. If you're ever navigating modern medical treatments or just trying to understand the science you read in the news, understanding this ecological shift changes everything.
Doctors are no longer just fighting a clump of rogue cells. They are treating an entire habitat.
They're trying to figure out how to alter the climate of that microscopic city so the cancer can no longer survive there.
It really highlights the sheer staggering complexity of the human body. Every time we think we have a disease figured out, we peel back a layer and find an entire ecosystem we didn't know existed.
We've gone on an incredible journey today. We started by picturing cancer as a static, lifeless lump. And thanks to this elegant research, we now have to visualize it as a dynamic, interactive biological habitat.
An ecosystem capable of suppressing the immune system so intensely that it unwittingly builds a safe room for opportunistic fungal tenants.
But before we wrap up, we always like to leave you with a final, lingering thought, something that builds on this research and pushes it into the future.
And the implications of that safe room are wild because it raises a really provocative question. If it's true that only the most highly aggressive, dangerous tumors, like these grade 3 invasive non-mucinous adenocarcinomas, create this uniquely immunosuppressed safe haven for a harmless fungus to gather.
Could we one day use the squatter itself as a diagnostic tool?
Yes, like an early warning alarm system.
Imagine a future where we don't have to wait for a tumor to grow large enough and dense enough to cast a shadow on a CT scan. What if, instead, during a routine physical, we just take a swab of your respiratory secretions and test it for the sudden, unexplained colonization of Pneumocystis jirovecii?
Exactly. If that specific fungal tenant suddenly sets up camp in a healthy person, it might be the red flag we need. A biological signal telling us that a dangerous, highly immunosuppressive tumor microenvironment is forming somewhere deep in the lungs long before the cancer itself is physically visible to our machines.
The squatters essentially tipping off the cops to the location of the invisible fortress. That is brilliant. It's the ultimate jujitsu, using the ecology of the lung to outsmart the disease that is trying to terraform it.
It's definitely a long way off and requires years of rigorous clinical validation, but it's exactly the kind of innovative future this foundational research is paving the way for.
Absolutely incredible. Well, that is all the time we have for today. We want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the microscopic cities living inside all of us. Keep exploring, keep challenging your assumptions about how things work, and as always, keep questioning the world around you.